Past Lives. So yeah, this was my number two movie that was actually released in the year. Past Lives, directed by Celine Song, starring Greta Lee, Tae and John McGarrell. Quick logline. Nora and Haesung, two deeply connected childhood friends, are wrested apart after Nora's family immigrates from South Korea. 20 years later, they are reunited for one fateful week as they confront notions of love and destiny. I'll be upfront in saying I have no, long lost love from, India or other places that I grew up in who, I've stayed in touch with, who's haunted me in some way, and then I actually met and what have you, and was sitting there, with my current partner at a bar. That's not what has happened in my life. But there's something about this movie and just the notion of people who were born elsewhere, grew up elsewhere, immigrated elsewhere. There's always a piece of that other place that
Hmm.
you call home that always stays with you and it haunts you in some form or the other.
Uh-huh.
And this year was the year after a long time, after 5 years, I actually went back to India because of COVID and life
Hmm.
changes and such. I just didn't have a chance to do that. And it was such a beautiful time to just be back and connect not just with family, but just be there, look at the
Hmm.
streets and the chaos of Delhi. And it was the rainy monsoon season. Just look at the rain from my parents' home's balcony, something that I'm very familiar with, but yet
Hmm.
it feels new and different. You kind of feel it and connect with it at a cellular level, if you will, but yet it's all different. You don't really belong here, but it still is a big part of who you are. And that's what this movie, I think, evoked in me.
Mm.
It is, of course, Haesung, which is Greta Lee's childhood friend, and that feeling of what this could have been and that long lost love. Like to me, the Haesung is like a physical incarnation of South Korea and home
Hmm.
and growing up over there and those familiar smells and colors. And when you make a left around this turn, what might be there, even though everything else on that turn has totally changed. Those feelings
Hmm.
and those memories will always be with you. And I think that's kind of what this movie captures, of that question of, what could life have been? And then it kind of comes to a very beautiful conclusion, is that it doesn't have to be either or. You can cherish what you grew up with, whether it's a person or those smells or those colors, and also have a new life in this new place with the new people who are in your life and love you. And to me, that's the perfect balance, right? That you're able to somehow weave all of that. Easier said than done, of course,
Sure.
but it was a good reminder that that can be done. And I feel quite lucky that for the most part I've been able to do that, and hopefully I you know keep doing it as I grow older. So yeah, that's what this movie evoked, and we can talk about the movie as we go further. But yeah, what did you think?
Yeah,
The
I didn't see the movie until
Yeah.
the podcast. I'd heard a lot about it and got a lot of really like rave reviews and definitely went into it expecting to really like it because at least on a surface level, I think what you just talked about is the themes of the film, which I think work really really well in terms of being an immigrant and having, she's with an American husband. So it's like how is she balancing her old world, who she used to be and growing up in Korea versus her new life that she chose in America with a, white husband. But the other plot is more like the surface level plot, which is just this romance thing about, a kid who had a childhood crush and now he's trying to kind of enact that. And, as we've talked about in the podcast, there are a lot of movies that sort of unrequited love, movies that I tend to really resonate with me. We talked about Once and the Before trilogy on this podcast before. In the Mood for Love is another one of my favorites, Brief Encounter, which you talked about. And I thought this movie would fit into that wheelhouse and be like, okay, well, I'm like sort of set up to like this movie. And I don't know, it didn't connect with the romance stuff, did not work at all for me. I thought the guy was kind of pathetic. And I'm like, get over yourself. Like, this is someone you met when you were 9. Like, come on, have a life. Like, what are you doing? Like, I didn't feel sorry for him. Like the romance piece really didn't work for me. It kind of just fell flat. But that second layer that you mentioned about sort of being, I don't say like caught between two worlds, she chose to leave And well, I guess she didn't. Her parents did, but
Right.
she was taken away from this homeland, and like how is she wrestling with that and all the things that I have no experience with this whatsoever. I was born in the U.S. I grew up in the U.S. I don't have that immigrant experience, but I imagine it's a lot like this of like, well, who am I? Like, how much of the Korea do I want to hold on to, or the old country? How much do I want to hold on to versus envelop this new life? And there's a lot of lines in this of like, oh, I kind of don't really talk Korean anymore. Oh, I talk it to, he mentions to her, your Korean kind of sucks now. She's like, yeah, well, I never really speak it anymore.
Yeah.
And just I think it just immediately comes back to her. Like he represents like that memory of this old life and that she don't, wants to cherish parts of it, but she knows it can't be her future. She chose her future with this, her American white husband. I think those things in the movie were beautiful and things that I thought really worked for me. But the romance piece, I was just kind of like, I don't know. I was expecting to be devastated at the end or care about them being together. And I was like, no, this guy's is so sad. Like, get over yourself, dude. Like, find somebody else. Like, why are you still hung up on someone you knew when you were 9? And just it just I don't know that didn't work for me. But I thought the rest of the movie and her acting especially, I thought was fantastic of the main woman.
Yeah. I mean, the critique that you have, I sort of feel like that is the point of the
Right.
movie,
Yeah.
that I
Right.
don't
Right.
I don't think he actually loves her. I think he's in this kind of arrested development kind of place. And you see that, right? Like his life with his friends, and he hasn't really matured
Right.
into anything more.
Hmm.
She's become this amazing kind of, and they always have this running joke because Greta's character is always planning what next big thing that I want to do, right,
Right.
in
Right.
life.
Right.
And he has
Achieve. Yeah.
really achieved, like he has no ambition per se, and he's done okay, and he's been with a girlfriend and didn't really go anywhere and such. So to me, this is not love. This is more like, oh, just a curiosity, number one, and B, what
Hmm.
else do I have going on? Let's sort of pursue this and let's figure it out. And there's a thing of just visiting the US as part of it too. I don't think it's love. It's not unrequited love at
Oh, I
all.
know it's not. Yeah. No, I'm
So
not
it's
saying.
just a different story. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm not criticizing the movie for that. I just
Yeah.
thought that that's what it was. And I was
Right.
like,
Yeah.
oh,
It's just
well,
not.
this is not at all what this is.
No.
It's about something completely different. Like the past life was this memory that he had of her when maybe he was happy and had his first crush and he just can't get over that. Like his past life is holding him back. Whereas I think she's able to find that right balance of her past life of her being a Korean. She's able to weave that into her present and then also her future. And I think it shows a maturity that he just doesn't. I think the contrast
Yeah.
between those two characters is how the movie sort of hits it at
Yeah.
that theme. Like it's really not at all about, like you said, a love. It's not a love story. It's
Not a
not
love
about
story.
it's not about that. Well, unless with the husband, I guess.
With the new
Eh,
husband, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
which was weird. That scene was very awkward. I also didn't like that scene at the bar. I thought it was unfair to this guy and he should have put his
I
foot down
know.
more. Like that was just something about that just didn't work for me. I was too embarrassed for him.
I know,
It was
but
just
that's the
yeah.
point of the movie
Oh,
too,
I
right?
understand that.
And
Yeah.
that's why it's so beautiful. Like that whole opening shot is so amazing of like, oh, who are these people? What is going on over
That
here?
was
And
great. Hmm.
yeah, and I do feel for him. Like maybe he should put his foot down more, or maybe Greta's character should be a little bit more thoughtful that, okay, you brought him together, but you're just talking to this guy in Korean, a language that your husband doesn't even speak for
Hmm.
most of it.
Hmm.
And that's kind of rude in a way. But at the same time, it's also kind of beautiful that her husband has the security and safety feeling with her to let her do this while he's there, and the
Right, right.
fact that she also feels this sense of security in him, that she can do this in front of him, that there's no sneaking around, there's no
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
because this conversation could have happened when they were walking around in New York, but they didn't. they
Right.
they have this conversation together. And in some ways, feeling and expression and emotions kind of transcend language. Like John Magaro knows exactly what is going on over here, I think, even though
Yeah,
he
yeah.
doesn't speak the language. So yeah, the movie is, and yeah, very beautiful in that sense, but I agree with you. I was sort of, yeah, it unsettled me for sure. And it
Yeah.
it brings up questions that, oh, if I were in these shoes, what would I do?
Right,
Of
right,
all
right.
of these three people's shoes. That's the other brilliant thing about the screenplay. I think the movie puts you in the shoes of all three of its lead characters and asks
Right.
that, what would you do?
Right, right, and they each deal with. I mean, I think the husband, the American white husband, his
Yeah.
the past life he's dealing with is his wife's past life that he can never be a part of, and which is really true for anyone, whether you're
Mm-hmm.
involved with an immigrant or someone from a different culture or not. Like
Right.
everyone has a past that you were not in. When you
Right.
join with that person, there is a past, and it's like how do you deal with that? I think that is what he's going through, but just in an extreme standpoint, because he never be a part of any of it because of the culture gap there, and that I think is a very interesting. Like he's a very interesting character too. And even
Yeah.
though he's not the lead, I mean, they're definitely it's the two Koreans are the two leads, but they give the husband a very sort of strong arc and interesting like situations he's put in and how he deals again with dating and being with someone who's from another culture who speaks a different language, like all those things. I think the movie subtly, without kind of getting into it too much, like kind of lays that in there, which I think is cool. Like that part of the movie, I really like. I think I just got too distracted by the fact that I thought this was a romance movie, and
An
I think that piece
expectation
doesn't.
sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that piece doesn't really work very well. And I guess the whole movie I was waiting for that to like hit me and it never did. And then at the final end, I was like, oh, maybe this is about like past lives, don't not in a romantic way, but in just
Yeah.
a yeah, like in the culture and what immigrant past is like. So yeah, I think if I see it again, which I might at
I
some
was
point, I think
just gonna
it'll
say,
it'll
yeah.
be I'll feel better about the movie, which at this I thought it was fine. Like I wouldn't recommend people run out to see it. Like I was like, this is okay. That's a fine movie. Like, it was fine. But maybe I need to see it again now that I sort of realized towards the end of what this was, and not what I thought and hoping, I guess, the movie
Yeah.
was about.
Yeah. Now I would recommend that to you, and I would recommend
Hmm.
this movie to anybody because I think it's not even about immigration. I think we all have past lives, no matter where we were. And,
Hmm.
this is a huge country that we live in. If you lived in, a town, I don't know, in California, and now you move to New York, you have a totally different life. You knew people over there that you grew up with. Maybe you had someone you fell in love with and maybe they're hung up on you, maybe you're hung up on them, or all these questions of what could life have been if I just stayed.
Hmm.
Everybody's leaving their hometowns to go somewhere or the other, right? So that's why
Hmm.
to me this movie is actually very universal. It doesn't have to be about immigration or different cultures, because the culture is the culture of the place that you were born in, and if you
Hmm.
left that place, you're in a different culture in my
Right,
mind.
that's true. No,
you
yeah,
know
no, the past lives are like I was saying, just your past, and everyone has a past.
right.
That especially when you're in a relationship, you can't go back in that past and be with that person then, but it's how you wrestle with that and integrate that into
Yeah.
the relationship in the present moving forward, which they they do a good job of showing how the maturity of that her and her husband's relationship. Even though again, I just felt uncomfortable for him
I
even
know.
though yes, he wasn't necessarily, I mean, he was uncomfortable, but there was a sense of trust there. It wasn't like
Yeah.
you said, they weren't sneaking around. He knew what was going on. Yeah, I do. I should see this again now that sort of have better expectations of what the movie's actually about because these themes are not usually captured in a lot of different films. They don't deal with
No,
this.
yeah,
Like Chasing Amy is probably the only other movie I can think of that has this whole theme about like a past and how it works into a relationship and can and can't work and that kind of thing. But no,
yeah.
this I enjoyed it. I'm glad I did see
I'm
it.
glad, yeah. And I would say, a movie like this, which is a smaller story, an intimate story, can be done in so many different ways. But I love that this movie is so cinematic. It's
Hmm.
just so beautifully captured. When you mentioned In the Mood for Love, it sort of has a lot of, I think, homages, I think, to that style of kind
Yeah.
of lyrical and cinematic. And New York, I mean, I hate to say New York is a character in the movie, but it just is. And I actually watched this movie in New York while I was visiting.
Oh, cool.
And I stepped out of the theater, it was raining, and I called my boyfriend. I was kind of teary-eyed. And it sort of has that kind of, now this movie has that moment attached
Oh, that's
to me,
cool.
like a new memory, on
Yeah.
top of it. I'm not from here either. I'm not even from New York. I don't even live there. I just happen to be there. So it's like kind of beautiful, right? That this movie talks about people and places and moving around and such, which just is gonna it's something that we'll keep doing, right? And
Hmm.
each of those places, whether for a long time or a short time, have some other significance for you, and that stays with you.
Hmm.
And now this movie has this memory attached to it because of that. But yeah, very cinematic, beautifully written. In my mind, one of the best movies of the year, which is
Oh, wow.
already a great year of movies.
Well, then maybe I should definitely see it. Yeah, I would. I liked it, but I wouldn't put it on like a top 10 of
Yeah.
2023. So I think I need to take
I
another
mean, it's an
pass at it.
expectation thing. I also watched in the theater, which
Uh,
not to kind of, go into our actual top
makes a
movies of the
difference.
year.
Yeah.
I just keep coming back to that again and again. Like these movies just have to be seen in the theater in a dark room with your phones off. Like
Yep.
this is not a movie to casually just put up, on your device. It's just not is.
No,
Not
I
it.
mean, yeah, real movies are made for a theater.
Yeah.
And not
Yeah.
just in scope and size, but just with attention that they expect you to have and focus
Yeah.
and all these things. It's not like a Ant-Man 4 or whatever, where you can kind of pay attention for 10 minutes and know what's going on and then like,
Yeah.
check Twitter again and then go back 10 minutes later. This is
Yeah.
not, oh, that's the best movies aren't, you
Yeah.
have to dedicate
Exactly.
time to them. But yeah, thanks for putting this on the list. Hey there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through 3 of our favorite movies. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.